Just before I start with the PoE itself, the activity itself, I would just like to have a few words about differentiation. I like to use the analogy of a denim jacket. So as you can see here, the denim jacket can be used for a lot of outfits. And each time your outfit looks different. So if you compare a denim jacket to a learner in your class, you can make an assumption that some days this learner will be in a group with other learners, for instance, that are also visual learners. So they are working in a group together, they are all using the learning style visual, and for that particular content, they work in a group together. Then the next week, you are explaining or teaching a concept in mathematics, for instance, and this same learner is of low skill level. So he needs a lot of attention and explanation and guidance on a certain topic. So then he would be grouped with the other learners that are also struggling with the same concept. So he would be in a different group. The next week, you are doing something else, another concept, and then he is, for that specific concept, he is of a high skill level, so he needs to be challenged with this particular topic or content because he already meets all the standards for the grade. So you need to also challenge him and give him activities that would be nice for him to do and not be so that he's not bored. So then he would be in another group that where the learners are also up to standard and need some challenging activities. So what I'm trying to explain here is that groups in your class are not stagnant, they are not fixed, they are flexible. So your learners will rotate in groups. They will not stay in one group for the whole year or even a whole semester or even a whole week. You as teacher needs to know your learners' different needs and their different learning styles and their skills so that you can group them accordingly. You need to adapt your instruction for the different groups that you use for the different content that you prepare, and you need to always keep in mind to accommodate the different needs of your learners in your class. So that's why the groups are flexible, so that you can also do continuous assessment and see if a learner advances from being a low skill level to a moderate level, then you need to adjust his group. All right, so change him to the next group. It is not labeling. Remember this, please. We are not talking about the slow group or the middle group or the high skill group with the learners. That is for your own planning. They never see that. They will never know in which group you group them for particular content. That is in your own administration. So use group names like colors or characters from a movie or whatever you want to do. Don't label them as ABC or 1, 2, 3. Be creative in your naming of your groups so that it's never perceived as labeling. So here is just a little slide on what is differentiated instruction, where you accommodate your specific learner's needs, the skills level, the readiness to learn, the interests, the language, prior knowledge, multiple intelligences, and different learning styles. You see how many different groupings you could have in one single class. For example, if you are using multiple intelligences and learning styles, you can have a practical activity for the kinesthetic learner. Sorry, people, I see I've got a call from Varsity College. I just quickly want to take it. I'm going to leave this slide Sorry about that. All right, so you will give practical activities for the kinesthetic learners, visuals for the visual learners, or designing lessons for the interpersonal and interpersonal learners. Being interpersonal wants to work in a group and intrapersonal wants to work on his own. So you always use flexible groupings. If you use skills level of learners, you could have a group for the higher level of skills for the particular section of mathematics, where you have activities to cater for expanded opportunities or challenging opportunities. And you can have a group for the moderate level of skills, where you give activities which is suitable for the grade, in other words, meeting the standards of the grade. And then you can have a group with low level of skill, where you cater for remediation and guidance from your side for that group. It is not labeling, and differentiation is a very, very crucial part in every lesson planning. So this is also what your activity 1 is about a lesson that you prepare in which you are going to use differentiation for different groups. There's just a little infographic on what differentiation is and what differentiation is not. So you can please just look through that. Right, so let's unpack our activity 1. We've got a context that is given to you in your portfolio of evidence. So they say you are a grade 6 math teacher and you are going to plan a differentiated lesson on data handling for your learners that is centered around a concept of measurement. Following this, you are going to design an investigation that learners have to then complete at home based on the same concepts covered in your lesson. For example, if my lesson entails measuring how far their classmates can run in 10 seconds, then my investigation could entail how far their parents drive in their car in one day over a period of 2 weeks. This would be shown on a graph by grouping the data like 0 to 50 kilometers, 50 to 100, etc. So what is important here is firstly that you are going to teach data handling. So those are the content that you are going to teach. Your context will be a topic from measurement. And as you can remember, our measurement content area is divided into 6 different topics. The first one is length. Then we also get mass. We get volume and capacity. We get temperature and time. And then the 6th one is the history of measurement, which you can also use, but I would suggest one of the other 5 topics. So, like in the example here on the PoE document, they have used the topic of measurement, the length. That is the topic that they used. And then they teach data handling, in other words, grouping data and representing data in a graph. That is what they taught the learners. All right, so the first thing that you have to remember is that you need to teach data handling. If you are not using data handling to teach, you will not receive marks for this activity. All right, so it should be data handling. You're not teaching measurement. You are teaching data handling, but use the data from a measurement topic, for instance, length or mass, volume or capacity, time or temperature. Any of those you can base your lesson on. Right, so you need to develop a lesson plan for grade 6 learners. where you teach a concept that is covered in data handling using a topic from measurement. Then you need to differentiate the lesson. This implies that you need to discuss in the section about the needs of the learners, that is section F of our lesson plan template. You need to discuss the different differentiation groupings. You will need to make this up. So you can decide, are you going to group them according to skills or according to needs or prior knowledge or learning styles or whatever you decide to group your learners. And you need to explain and describe the learners in your class. Remember, I don't know them, so you're going to make it up and you're going to give an explanation in section F of the learners in your class and give reasons why you are grouping them the way you are for this lesson. Then your discussion about the most appropriate teaching strategies need to substantiate your pedagogical choices for each group of learners, and that you're going to discuss in section G. So you're going to decide on teaching strategies which you will need for your groups and which you are going to use in your lesson. Your lesson plan should be developed for a double lesson, in other words, 1 hour. So you need to take this into consideration when you write up your lesson plan. It's for a total group of 30 learners. So please remember, people, if you submit this activity, I need to form a picture in my mind that this lesson is going to take you an hour. So the activities that you plan for your lesson, as well as the teaching steps and activities in your lesson, should be for an hour. So you need to submit a lesson plan using the lesson planning template. Then you also need to submit the worksheets that you give the learners in each group for the activity in the class, as well as the investigation to be done at home. And then you need to also supply marking guidelines, in other words, memos or rubrics for each of the activities that the groups will do. So let me just explain this again. You're going to submit a lesson plan. In that lesson plan, you're going to explain what your different groups will do in the class as class activities. You need to then also supply those class activities as worksheets for the different groups. So in other words, you would have a minimum of 2 or 3 different activities according to your different groups. You need to supply the worksheet as well as a memo or a rubric. You can decide if you want to mark the worksheets in class with a memo or with a rubric. You don't have to supply both. Okay, so you choose which one you would like to use, a memo or a rubric. Then you also need to create an investigation which they will do for homework after the class lesson. So they're going to go home and they're going to do an investigation. So you need to explain what they're going to do as well as give the investigation as a worksheet together with a rubric or a memo. So guidelines for this activity. Refer to your CAPS document, Grade 6 Data Handling. Remember, you are teaching data handling and you integrate within mathematics with a context of a topic in measurement. I've already explained this. If you decide to use maths as a topic, you can base all your data and all your examples, all your graphs on maths, having different situations and examples using maths as a topic. Do some research and planning. Use your CAPS document and look out for what are grade 6s doing that is new to grade 6, and focus on that in your teaching activities. Your teaching and learning activities should be created for grade 6 learners. Remember, they've been doing data handling since grade 4. So they are used to tally tables, they've used pictographs and bar graphs before. So focus on the new content in grade 6. That's just a tip. Then there's also a very important document for you to read, and that is the guidelines for responding to learner diversity in the classroom. I will upload that for you under your module guide and PoE folder, so that you can refer to that to see how differentiation should be handled in your class. You can also refer to Luneta or Landsberg or any other credible resource. Please use other credible sources and ideas and reference. If you use ideas or examples or worksheets and activities from the internet, you need to reference. The focus is to differentiate your lesson to accommodate all learners. Discuss the differentiation groups in section F, and this should be more than you would normally give in a lesson plan. I don't know the learners in your class. Tell me about them. Discuss your different learners and their different needs. Take their different learning styles, abilities, background, and language into consideration. And then you are going to discuss how you're going to cater for their learning needs and the most appropriate teaching strategies you are going to use in section G, as well as give reasons for your pedagogical choices for each of the groups of learners in teaching strategies section G. So F and G, those two sections are going to be longer than usual because you need to discuss a few things there. You need to have worksheets for each group. Say, for instance, your class consists of 30 learners. How are you going to group them? You need to discuss. You can, for instance, say, for this activity and for the content that I'm teaching, I'm going to group them according to learning styles. So I'm going to have a group that's visual, a group that's kinesthetic, and what is the other one? Hearing group. So then I would plan activities for the group which is visual, for practical activities for the kinesthetic group, and maybe a video and earphones or whatever for the group that is focusing on hearing. So that would be your 3 groups, and you're going to say, in my visual group I'm going to have 5 learners because they are all visual learners. In my kinesthetic group, I'm going to have 12 learners, and in my hearing group, I'm going to have, or the auditive group, I'm going to have, how many are there left? Say, for instance, 10. Okay, so it doesn't have to be 5 groups of 6 or 3 groups of 10. You are going to group your learners according to their needs. Then you need to plan worksheets for each of the groups for the class activities. Then you provide your marking guidelines, and then you are also going to create an investigation which they should do at home with instructions of what they should do, together with a memo or a rubric. Refer to your reference guideline, your IIE quick reference guide. Provide a reference list after each activity of the PoE, and use your rubric for your PoE. Make sure you tick every criteria. So let's just look at our rubric. I've highlighted in yellow that if a lesson plan is delivered that is based on any topic other than a differentiated grade 6 data handling lesson, a mark of 0 would be awarded. So please remember to focus on data handling. So this is just your routine part A for your description of your target population, your lesson information and learning environment. It's general and complete, all the first few sections that you complete on your lesson plan. Your central aims are thoroughly listed, correctly reflect the lesson being taught, and are clearly linked to the CAPs. Then the objectives of the lesson is written in a measurable verb is used, and they are written from the perspective of the learner and are clear. Remember, if you list lesson objectives, you need to make sure that you do indeed cover them in your lesson and do what you are saying you are going to do in your lesson objectives. Then your lesson rationale, the curriculum integration. Just a note on this, you get marks. I just want to check how many marks you get for that. 7 marks for using curriculum integration. If you're going to say to me, there's no integration, I need to give you a 0. Because if I follow my rubric, I need to give you 7 marks for using integration. But if you're going to say that you're using natural sciences and technology as integration, then you also need to show how you are going to implement the integration in your lesson. Then section F, which is the consideration of learners. The needs, the interest and characteristics are considered and discussed, as well as their implications for teaching and learning of the content of the lesson. So the implications here are how you are going to group them according to what. You need to discuss that. All right, so that I have already explained. Then teaching strategies and differentiation is section G. A discussion about the suitable teaching strategies draws on discussions about the demands of the content and consideration of learners, showing pedagogical reasoning about the best way to teach this content to these learners. In other words, the content of your lesson, why did you decide to use a certain teaching strategy to teach this content about data handling to these learners in your class, focusing on their, for instance, learning styles, if you have chosen that as your differentiation, or on their level of skills, or on their needs, or whatever you decide on to differentiate. Then the second part of your lesson development, your introduction. It's introduced in a logical and engaging manner, so learners know what to expect and what is expected of them. Prior knowledge is established in an engaging way, not just asking a few questions. Engage your learners. Have a wow factor in your lesson to start your lesson with. Teaching steps. The most appropriate teaching strategy has been selected, and you've given explanation of what your teacher is going to do in the lesson, as well as what the learners are going to do in the lesson, and how you and they are going to scaffold their understanding and how you are going to scaffold the content that you are teaching. Both learner and teacher lesson descriptions are included, and the learners are active in the construction of their knowledge. And you as teacher should also be active in scaffolding the steps. Then you have included procedures for concluding the lesson and transitioning to the next or follow-up activity. You've given key points and clearly recapped and linked to the next learning activity. In your conclusion, you can also describe how they should do the investigation, which will then be homework for them. So you're going to recap your key aspects of your lesson in the conclusion section, as well as explain what they need to do for the investigation. So the activities and worksheets are part C of this activity, 1 of the PoE. So to get 10 marks or 8 to 10 marks, your activities exactly match the targets to be achieved. The activities are relevant and appropriate for South African children at intermediate phase, and I would like to stress on grade 6 level. Challenge them a bit, please. Don't just give them an investigation to go and do about the favorite colors. Okay, so challenge them a bit, like we have spoken about that in class. The activity encourages the learner to investigate, analyze, and interact with the environment by collecting data that is relevant and interesting to a grade 6 learner for the investigation homework. So the investigation that you give for them to do at home should be relevant, interesting, and they should also interact with their environment. Right, do you have any questions on this activity? Anything that I should explain again that's not clear, please feel free to ask me. I will go back to a slide and explain again if you are unsure. Any questions on what to teach? You need to teach the data handling. Remember the topic of measurement. You need to differentiate and to explain that in section F and G. You can also explain that in the lesson plan itself, where you explain what you are going to do during the lesson. You can give me a description of your different groups and what each of them are going to do and how you're going to do it. Please refer to that guideline, this one, guidelines for responding to learner diversity in the classroom. It's also a Department of Education document. You can also find that on the portal. Any questions, people? You can email me anytime, Sabrina Lee, that's 100%. So if there's something that you don't understand, please ask, don't sit and wonder. Pop me an email and I will try to assist you. The lesson plan template, I'm sure it's under your teaching experience in that module, but I think I have uploaded it. I will just check. Otherwise, I will just upload the lesson plan template for you as well. And I'm going to put up this presentation, the PDF of this discussion, as well as the guidelines for responding to learner diversity. And then I will also include the lesson plan. I will file this in the folder, module guide and PoE on VC Learn in your TIMA6311 module.